Stash busting. I'm here to talk about stash busting. A slug of tea. So, technically, actually, I'm not quite ready to count off the stash busting total, the amount of yarn I've used for the Daisy Blouse, because I have to make covered buttons. And I've ordered the button moulds, but they're not here yet. I still have to block and sew everything up. But I've got a whole unopened skein of the yarn left, the white yarn, and an almost full skein of the blue left. Because in case you weren't around when, through the whole saga of this Daisy Blouse last February, I tried to finish it and then I realised I wasn't going to have enough yarn. The yarn was out of stock everywhere in the UK, and the manufacturer weren't manufacturing more at that moment, and so a follower, and there was also a whole load of complications because of Brexit, which escaped me in this moment, but basically a follower in the Netherlands called Micah sent me a little care package, and she bought 2 for me just in case, and so to have that much left from the first one, if I was cutting it fine. If I'd made any more mistakes or if I'd lost any more daisies, then I wouldn't have had enough. So once again, thank you, Micah, for saving this project. And given that I've got a whole skein of this left and almost a full skein of this left, I was wondering if I make Micah a thank you present out of them and send it back to the Netherlands. I mean, it might be a bit random. It's like a year later. She might have moved or something. I suppose I can get back in touch with her. But there's also a part of me that does want to drag and hoard this in case the Daisy Blouse ever breaks. Do I take this out of the stash and put it in the mending pile? I've got a couple of yarns that I keep for mending. Would I need a whole skein for mending? Is that wasteful? And do I just keep these as spares? I'm tempted to do that just because of the work and effort that has gone into this project. I think that means we can take 9 skeins off the total. I'm so out of sorts. I can't remember. I don't have my notes. But I would still like to make a thank you gift for Micah because she really saved my skin, blouse, Daisy Blouse, and she didn't have to do that. So maybe instead, hang on, my mum's ringing me. Where were we? Yes. So I think I'm saving the yarn just in case I need to repair the Daisy Blouse or adjust it, make it bigger, because I think that would be doable. Might have to get a bit creative with how I cut it apart and things, but I think I could adjust it if I needed to. So in terms of a gift for Micah, this is not Engineering Knits Micah, by the way. This is a different Micah. It's just a coincidence that they share the same first name. I have contemplated whether I want to make something else out of daisies, because I mean, this project has been an albatross around my neck for so long. But actually, once I started getting into the rhythm of it, I did really enjoy the process, and I'm really uninspired by knitting at the minute. And I've really been enjoying crochet. And as you know, my issue with crochet is that as much as I enjoy the process of crochet, I don't tend to like the finished product. I don't like the way granny squares look. I find it looks really heavy and lumpy. And every time I say that, people tell me like, oh, you just haven't found the patterns that you like. And I'm sure they're right. And I've never previously had the inclination to look very hard. I don't really like doing amigurumi. I don't really like, I mean, I've crocheted blankets. I don't mind crochet interior things more. So maybe that's what I need to look into. But yeah, crochet clothes are just stiff and lumpy to me. Like I've got a double knit weight cardigan on and I'm like, ugh, it's so lumpy and heavy. I prefer my knitwear lighter weight, I suppose. So I wonder whether I could make maybe a bag or something. I suppose I'd have to line it, but that could be okay. One to think about. I swear, trying to find an angle in this house where I'm not entirely backlit is almost impossible. This is the best I can do for today. But I wanted to talk to you because... do you know what this is? Of course you do. It's done! The Daisy Blouse is done! what a relief. You will have seen the video about this by the time this stash busting episode goes up. So I won't go over everything again. I would just direct you to that video, should you like to watch it. It's quite an emotional watch, I'm not gonna lie, and this turned out to be quite an emotional project, but I love it. I'm so pleased it's done. I think it's stunning, it's full of mistakes, and I don't care, and I have no idea when I will ever wear it. But there it is. In terms of stash busting, now, I was totting this up the other day, so I originally had 5 skeins of yarn that I was using up in the Daisy Blouse. I bought 1 more off Ravelry, and then I bought 2 more, or I was sent 2 more by Micah in the Netherlands, a follower. Now, I have this much of the blue left, and I did have to crack into my second skein that Micah sent me, only for a little bit though, only to do some of the buttons. I've accidentally made 1 extra button, but it's always good to have a spare, so I'll hold on to that. So in total that's 8, and I think I've come to the decision that I'm going to take 8 off my stash busting total, because you might remember when I did my reset a little while ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, I can't remember. I talked about there are things in my stash that I'm keeping, not because I want to use them up, but for mending. And I think given how much work went into the Daisy Blouse and how delicate it is and how fragile, I'm saving these specifically for Daisy Blouse mending. So they are no longer in the stash busting stash, they're in the mending stash. So that means I can take 8 off the total. We were at 101.5. I need to start writing this down again. I'm pretty sure it was 101.5. Let me check. Yes, 101.5. Take 8 is, oh my God, 103.5. That's right. Oh my, no, 93.5. What's 101.5 take 8?
101.5 minus 8 is 93.5.
Right. So we are back under 100. Yay! Calls for celebration, right? I have a confession to make. Now, before you get mad at me, I haven't broken any couponing rules, and I haven't broken any stash busting rules, because there are no stash busting rules other than trying to use up as much as possible. And also, all the yarn that I acquired for very good reason, in that a friend got in touch with me and a lady in her village was having to go into a care home for health reasons, and her sons were destashing her entire stash, and she was a professional knitter back in the day, and she had so much quality yarn, vintage, modern, you name it. And this very kind friend of mine contacted me and said, would you be interested in any of it? The sons are raising money for charity by they're just accepting donations. So take what you want and donate to the charity that the sons are involved with. But I couldn't resist. And I've just totted it up. I took 36 50-gram balls of yarn. 36. Now, in my defense, a lot of it is 2-ply cashmere. Look at that. Look at the chartreuse. It is so unbelievably soft. And as you know, I like to knit 2-ply patterns. I like using it for vintage projects. It's hard to come by in anything that isn't really delicate. To find like a high twist 2-ply, I find quite difficult, and this is a high twist 2-ply. Or I should say lace weight yarn. It's just gorgeous, and I couldn't leave. I mean, I left a lot behind. I could have taken more. I feel like under the circumstances I was very restrained. But I have all this 2-ply cashmere. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. I have a packet of Adria Fill. I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, but it's Italian, superwash, Aran weight, navy blue. Part of the reason why I took this was because there is enough for like a sweater or a jumper or something. Maybe not quite a cardigan. I also got she'd obviously started something. Looks like a tank top. Oh look! Oh no! Don't get emotional. Don't get emotional. I'm getting quite low on variety in the stash, and I'm getting quite low. Like I say, I have hardly any heavier weights, and I've come to realise that I like to pick and choose what I want to work on depending on where I am with my health and my mental health and things. You know, fiddly 2-ply lace work has its place in my crafting rotation. It just doesn't always line up with where I am in the moment. So having a variety of options to choose from is a big help. But what I was really excited about when I found this is this. So this is Patterns Capstan. And this is, it says on it, for Aran knitting. It's an Aran weight, but it was specifically designed for knitting Aran jumpers. And I have a little bit of a soft spot in my vintage knitting pattern collecting for vintage Arans. So I have this one, for example, which, I mean, look at that sweater. How cozy is that? Oh, it's over there. Hang on. Oh, okay. But I also have this, the Aran book from Patterns. Now, this went viral because it's got some really hilarious patterns in, including one that I saw decades ago, probably, in like a BuzzFeed article of ridiculous vintage knitting patterns or something. Head to toe, Aran, bobbles, knitwear. Very 60s. I mean, hilarious. So when I found a copy of this book, I was like, right, I'm having that. And all the patterns, all these patterns, these vintage patterns ones specifically, patterns, they all call for this yarn, Patterns Capstan. And it's one of those, I've been desperate to do a project where I do a vintage knitting pattern with the vintage yarn that it was intended for. Finding a sweater quantity of the appropriate vintage yarn has never happened before until this moment. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I can't believe it. So finally, not only am I getting to make one of my wacky, eccentric vintage Aran patterns, I've got the original vintage yarn to do it. Now, I don't unfortunately have enough to make this one, and I've been looking through my Aran book to see what I would like to make. And originally, I thought I would make one of these. They're sort of raglan. There's a men's version and a ladies' version. You can have a polo neck or a crew neck. But I've realised something. So this pattern book is pre-decimalisation. So I mention this a lot. A lot of my understanding of when vintage patterns are from, or how I date vintage patterns, comes from the introduction of the decimal system in Britain, or and the metric system. So we have the decimalisation of currency in 1971. So when you get a pattern like this, which has both of them on, for about a year or two before, they started publishing the price in both. So before the switch over, people were accustomed to seeing 3 shillings is 15 pence. So that's how we know. This pattern book is probably 1969 or 1970. Now, the decimalisation of the textile industry happened gradually through the 70s. So the textile industry, the sort of final switchover was supposed to be 1975 or something like that. I can't remember the date exactly. But my skeins of the yarn are in 50-gram skeins, and this pattern book, the skeins are in 2-ounce skeins. So while I counted them up and I was like, oh, great, I've got 15 skeins or 16 skeins or however many it is, I can't remember. And I was looking through the patterns going, oh, okay, so I have 15 skeins. In my size, I can make this jumper. But actually, that's 15 2-ounce skeins, and a 50-gram skein is a little bit less than 2 ounces. So to be on the safe side, I've decided to do a pattern which only calls for 13, and hopefully it'll be enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this men's cardigan. The idea is that this will hopefully fit Woody. He loves a cardigan. I've okayed this with him. I also hilariously sat him down before I cast on and was like, we have to have a discussion. Are you going to break up with me? At which point he was mortified and I had to explain it was because of the knitting sweater curse. If you don't know, it's supposed to be a curse. You start knitting your boyfriend, significant other, whatever, jumper, a cardigan, and shortly afterwards, before you get time to finish the jumper / cardigan, the relationship ends. So it's supposed to sort of be like a jinx. You start knitting them a cardigan, they break up with you. So I double checked. I was like, are you planning to break up with me? He didn't find it as funny as I did. Whoops. Anyway, hopefully it will be for Woody. Touch wood. If not, it will fit me. It will be a bit big on me, but I'm hoping that it will sort of just look slouchy and cool and oversized. But I'm so excited. I have never, ever had the opportunity to make a vintage pattern with the yarn it was intended to be knitted with. I should say I have quarantined this. I have been very thorough with the moth possibility. I haven't found any sign of moths. I haven't seen any evidence of moths in any of it. And it is quarantined away from the rest of the stash just in case anyway. It's so cool. I can't believe it. I'm so excited. But yes, that does mean we have to add 36 balls of wool to the total. So what did I say we got to? 93 and a half, add 36, add 30, 129 and a half. What's 93.5 add 36?
93.5 plus 36 is 129.5.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have still got it. I have no idea what I'm going to make with the cashmere yet, or the navy. I want to work on this. I want to work on this one first of all. I'm desperate to make a start. So, wish me luck. I can't believe it. And if, by any chance, I don't have enough yarn to make the vintage Aran one, the cardigan for Woody, I also have this patterns, which is from the 80s. The recommended yarn for this one is Patterns Beehive Aran, so it's not the same, but it's sort of like an 80s cropped Aran, and I just thought that was a really nice, in terms of like vintage Arans, that there's like an updated one for the 80s. I love it. And I got this in a charity shop years ago, and I've been holding on to it, wanting to make it. So I might make this out of the navy. I know you're not supposed to make Arans out of colours I use. They're supposed to be cream. But anyway, I might make this out of the navy if I've got enough. Possibly not. But how cool is that? I might buy yarn to make it anyway. So yes, we're up to 129.5. I mean, at least the good thing about heavier weight yarn is they knit up quick. So in the comments on my last stash busting video, somebody asked me to do an update of where I am in terms of works in progress. Because with the Daisy Blouse finished, which is one of my longest running works in progress, that dramatically changes things. And as I was going through Finish It February, I was also having thoughts about some other long running projects and what I want to do with them, and thinking about some things. So I just thought I'd share my thoughts with you basically. So currently my works in progress are my vintage Aran cardigan and my wrap bra / top. So my other works in progress now, I only really have three. I have three. So I have a current project which I leave at my parents' house. It just sort of saves me lugging all my stuff backwards and forwards. So I have a sort of knitting project at my parents' house, which is a work in progress, which is a little shawl. Can't remember the name of it now, can I? And I printed out a hard copy of the pattern, which I left at my parents' house. I tell you what, TBC on that one. A shawl pattern is a work in progress. I have a half abandoned sock, which I want to get back to. It was just, I got to the point of doing a heel turn and put it aside, and it stayed on the shelf because I didn't really want to work on socks anymore. I am now in more of a mood to work on socks. So I might revisit that project, but I think I'd rather finish one of these two before I pick up another project, if that makes sense. I don't think I've necessarily got the brain space for 4 active knitting projects. I've got Sagan at home here with me today, and he doesn't like to be left without Woody, so he's a bit nervous, aren't you, puppy? You gonna come and say hello? No? Yeah, so he periodically gets up to wait by the front door, only to go back to sleep again. But the only other thing then that I have as a work in progress is my Hexie Puff blanket. And speaking of Sagan, I'm reluctant to carry on with it. And I know there will be people who are like, I told you so, and there'll be people who will be like, no, because they love seeing the Hexie Puffs, and I love it too. My issue is, so does Sagan. Sagan loves anything that is filled with polyfill stuffing, toy stuffing, whatever you want to call it, and it's like crack to him. Once he gets a sniff of that polyfill, he will not stop until every shred of it is out. Hold on. Can I borrow Ted? Can I borrow Ted? Say hello to Ted. Do you understand my concern? Whoop, there he goes. Because, sorry, let me get comfortable again. Because the Daisy Blouse is a lot of work, and I knew it would be a sort of years and years project, and I started it before I met Woody and by extension Sagan. So it's not right for the life I lead now, because I don't want it to get destroyed, as it instantly will. And I also just know that there'll be people who will be like, oh, well, you know, put it somewhere where Sagan can't get to. He gets everywhere. He gets everywhere. And it's almost impossible. Like, I've tried to keep him off my bed, off my electric blanket, everything. This dog is so needy that if it smells of you, he will burrow his face into it. So it's just not right anymore, and I bought a load of yarn specifically to make Hexie Puffs with, which is hand-dyed sock yarn. And there's a part of me that would rather just make it up into socks, because I wear hand-knitted socks all the time. I really enjoy sock knitting. Sock knitting was the thing that got me into knitting in the first place, really, as an adult. Well, as a 17-year-old. As a chronically ill 17-year-old, it's a different thing to being a 17-year-old, right? She says, drinking her electrolytes. So what do I do about the Hexie Puff blanket? Because as much as I enjoy knitting them and as much as I enjoy making them, and they are so tactile and squishy and lovely, I could never leave that blanket out ever unattended. And given my own memory issues, fatigue issues, object permanence issues as a result of my disabilities, the reality is I'm going to forget. I'm going to forget, and it's going to get torn to shreds. So do I say goodbye to the beekeeper's quilt? And if so, what do I do with all the Hexie Puffs that I've made so far? I know that you can do like exchanges and stuff. I've seen on Ravelry that, you know, people send them off and stuff, but mine are made to a different gauge than the actual original project, and they're a bit bigger, because I contemplated sending them to Engineering Knits, because I know she is also making a Hexie Puff blanket, but like I say, mine are bigger. And because I don't have it here, it's, you know, wrapped up nice and safe from the moths back at Mum and Dad's. I really need to go and look and see how far I've gotten and how many I've made, because it might be that I can use those to make something else, like little seat cushions or something to go on the stools, or I don't know. But my real question is, in terms of stash busting for now, do I use up the yarn I bought for the beekeeper's quilt in a different project? In terms of like active projects that are here, I'm preferring this one at the minute to the bra, partly because the tiny needles on that have been really hurting my hands, but also I'm at the point where I have to take all the stitches off my circular needles and put them on waste yarn to try it on, and I can't really do any more until I try it on, and I'm sort of dreading trying it on and checking the fit in case it's not right and I have to rip back, so I'm sort of procrastinating. I know I should just bite the bullet and do it, but here we are. Sometimes you just want to sit and knit and you don't want to be faffing about with things. So I'm working on my Aran Patterns 1960s cardigan, which may be for me and may be for Woody. Having realised that I'm procrastinating on this project, it means that it's motivated me to actually do the fitting and see where we're up to. Although I do have my Tesco's shopping arriving any moment, so maybe this is a poor choice in that sense, but maybe I just get them off the needles and wait to try it on until after my groceries have been delivered. I realised the other day, as I was talking about the my current works in progress, a sort of work in progress update for Stashbusting, I missed one. Now, you may remember at the end of last year I was talking about trying to take part in a collaboration with my dear friend and very understanding colleague, Engineering Knits, about tea cozies and Call the Midwife. Well, I left the project on hold in the hopes that I could someday make that video or turn it into something, and it never happened. So I just decided, like, right, okay, do you know what? I'm cutting my losses. I'll finish it, and it will just become a part of Stashbusting. So I cast off. I had like 3 rows to go. That was what I'd left. I cast off, but I haven't sewn it up, and I've got quite an amount of this pink yarn left, and I've got a little bit of the white, and so I've got to sew it up, but that won't use all of that up. And then I thought, let's make a pom-pom to go on the top. So I've been back to Mum and Dad's, where most of my crafting supplies are, and I've got my biggest size pom-pom maker, and hopefully this will put a little bit of a dent in the leftover pink as well, and then maybe we'll be able to count off like 50 grams or something, especially seeing as we've added quite a lot recently. But anyway, the sewing up has to be done first. So I think that's close enough for one half. Feels pretty dense, so let's start on this side. Okay, the moment of truth. Possibly not the best decision to do this outside when it's really windy, but... So now we slot this in, like that. We're certainly able to get it tighter than doing it with bits of cardboard or something. Et voila! Nice fluffy pom-pom to go on the top of my tea cozy. Oh my god, it's huge. Do you think it's too big compared to the tea cozy? Oh my god, so silly. I love it. A Stashbusting update. My 1950s or 60s style tea cozy is finished. Look at the pom-pom on the top. Ah! I love it, but I don't have a teapot to model it on. So use your imagination. I don't really know what I'm going to do with this. I haven't secured the pom-pom on very well, and I might come up with some other situation where it like buttons on or fastens on or poppers on or something, because I don't know, are you likely to wash a tea cozy? I suppose it might get tea stained, in which case you'd have to take the pom-pom off. But because this style of tea cozy had deliberately had a gap, because they were expecting you to put like a little doll in there or something, very bizarre. They seem to think that I could go into a shop and buy one of these, specifically a doll for a knitted tea cozy. Anyway, I haven't been able to find one, hence the pom-pom. So I wonder, unfortunately there's a gap ideally where I would put a popper. So I might just have to leave it as it is. It might get donated to a prop store. But in terms of Stashbusting, I have this much yarn left, and I've counted it, I've weighed it, I've weighed it, and it's 22 grams. Now, I've gone back through all my previous videos, because if you remember, I bought this yarn to do a trim on a knitted costume I was doing. And I was like, oh, when I'm done with that costume, I'll add whatever's left onto the total of the stash. and I never added it on. So while I have used up some, I actually now have to add on 22 grams. So we were at, where were we? We were at 97.5. We added 4, which took us to 101. We took off 8, 101.5. We took off 8, which took us to 93.5. We added 36, 129.5, 129.75. 129.75. So, okay. I also thought I would show you, just before we wrap up for this episode, I finished the back. Finished the back of my Aran cardigan for Woody. I need to block it. As you can see, it's very curly. But I don't have a vessel big enough to soak this in. I've got some wool wash here, so unless I use the sink, but I'm always nervous about the wool wash staining the metal sink. So I might have to take it home and back to mum and dad's and block it there. Not ideal. Unless I buy myself a washing up bowl, I might do that. Might go to the pound shop tomorrow. But yes, 4 months into stash busting, we are significantly higher than when we started the year. I think my next project might be a knitted baby hat or preemie hat or something out of this, so it's gone. Let me know your thoughts about what I should do about my beekeeper's quilt, my Hexie Puff blanket. Do I keep it? Do I abandon it? Do I adapt it? Apart from that, I think that's everything. Thanks for watching. See you next time.